Tonight we're going to talk about data science, and in particular, we will talk about WeCloudData's data science bootcamp curriculum. We'll talk about generative AI, job skills, and I'll explain why your hard skills are not the same as job skills, and we'll talk about other stuff as well. So let's get started. First of all, I would like to let everyone know that we run a data science bootcamp, and I'm going to introduce the learning path, and that's basically based on the curriculum we designed. And we revamped our data science bootcamp curriculum for the January cohort. And I'm excited to share that with everyone because even if you're not joining our bootcamp, it's still going to be very useful as a learning path that you can follow to become a modern data scientist equipped with generative AI skills. So I'm going to walk you through that. In terms of the bootcamp itself, it has two options: the 3 months full-time bootcamp, 6 months part-time bootcamp, and it includes portfolio project building. We also give student opportunity to work on real client project. We also have career mentorship. We are also changing the way we do mentorship, and we're quite excited about that. I'll tell you about how it works at the end. So the bootcamp basically it has multiple short courses. We begin with data fundamentals and generative AI. And as you can see, I bolded generative AI because it's new. And we're launching the generative AI training course in February. And all the data science bootcamp students will get free access to the Gen AI course. That's a separate course, but we also integrated generative AI into our data science curriculum. So I'll give you more details. After you've learned the fundamentals, we'll teach students data science skills, data visualization, analytics, data manipulation, data wrangling. And then we'll introduce machine learning. And then we also teach student big data. And we're teaching student, Amazon Web Services, how to work with, Apache Spark. It's not a course that will turn you into a data engineer, but it should give you, enough experience with different tools, modern tools, cloud platforms, and how to scale your data analysis. And then after the bootcamp, our students will typically work on a real client project while they receive one-on-one career mentorship. So I'll explain more later. This is a typical bootcamp journey. Students will begin with 3 months, a 12-week bootcamp training, and there will be like a demo day or demo week where students, present to potential, hiring partners of the bootcamp, and then there will be a period of career support. WeCloudData plan to, or try to do it differently. So first of all, if you take the 12-week bootcamp training, students will need to complete, small milestones, right? Complete some portfolio project. But after, graduation, they will work on real client projects. There are different types of projects, and student can choose projects based on availability and also their interest. And that allows them to add real experience on the resume, and eventually it helps them stand out in the job market. And then we also have career workshops. And then most importantly, I think most students benefit from one-on-one career mentoring. And the mentors are data scientists or data engineers who work in the field. So this is how the WeCloudData's bootcamp work. And we also have a part-time option. But the main difference is just the duration. Part-time program is designed for someone who has a full-time job, so you can't really quit your job to join a full-time program. But we do have students switching, between part-time and full-time, so we tend to keep it flexible. Okay, we do have superior outcome. This is a little bit outdated, but this is the most current, published numbers provided by the Education Ministry. And this result is the result for our Canadian school. So as you can see, we do have 90.9% employment rate. I didn't name some other boot camps here based in Canada, but I think the second highest is 84%. I think most of the schools are doing well, But if you look at the employment in the data field, the in-field employment rate, we stay at 90.9%. 2021 was the best year. So employment rate is much higher, right? But if you look at the second school, the employment rate is 84%, but in-field drops to 68%. Now, this is 2021. I have to be honest, 2022, 2023, everybody know that the job market is not as good, right? So it cannot be 90%. The 2022-23 number will be between 70% and 80%. So what happened to the students who didn't get a job? Some students delayed their job search plan, and a lot of our students are actually just staying in or on the real client project to keep building their experience. So as you can tell, like even after 6 months, we still keep supporting the students and mentor them on real client projects. Some students will accumulate even more work experience or real experience and eventually get a job. So I think this is something that we're really proud of. Even though sometimes it's a little bit hard to manage everyone's expectation, but we definitely try our best to help our student get employment. All right. And now I would like to talk about the curriculum. So since, I think last week I did one session and I sort of introduced the curriculum already. But I would like to introduce the new one today because just in the last week, we actually upgraded our curriculum because I think I sort of mentioned that we are launching generative AI program. So this is upgraded version. So let's go through that. When a student joined a new bootcamp, starting this January, they will go through something called data fundamental and generative AI. And we also introduce no-code machine learning. This is something very new. It's been around for a while, but not many schools actually teach no-code ML. So let me give you more details. In the data fundamental Gen AI introduction course, of course, we need to teach students SQL because that's very important data science skill. I covered that in the previous session when we introduced, the data science hot skills. You can watch the recording on YouTube, but you will be introduced to databases, how to write queries, because it's a language for you to talk with data, right? And then students will work on some mini projects, and then we'll teach students the fundamentals of Python programming. You won't become a data scientist after the fundamental course because there's a lot to learn, but you absolutely need to know programming before you can start to work with data. And then we teach Tableau. There's a Power BI version, so we don't want to teach like two different visualization tools at the same time. Sometimes we cover Power BI, sometimes we cover Tableau. But just so you know, if you're in this course looking for Power BI, the recording is available as self-paced learning material as well. Now, the exciting part is that we're introducing generative AI. I have a couple of slides to sort of explain how that works. But let me get through this first. In the generative AI introduction course, we will teach, we'll give students an introduction to the landscape, right? And then we will introduce prompt design, prompt engineering. I think that is very important skill, not just for data scientists. I think everyone in, working like in industry needs to know prompt design and how to work with tools like ChatGPT and Bard so we can become more efficient. We introduce lots of generative AI use cases because it can be used for different purposes, right? It can be used for marketing, can be used for procurement, can be used for supply chain, even research, right? And then, of course, we have to talk about AI ethics when we introduce anything related to AI. We have to talk about the responsible use of AI and potential risks. And then we also added a new topic called AI automation. I think AI automation is going to, and also AI agents are going to become extremely impactful. So in this fundamental course, we'll teach students like how to work with Zapier, Power Automate, and of course, interact with OpenAI API to complete some automation tasks. This is quite exciting. We've done some training with our corporate clients and working with a lot of students, and some of the use cases implemented in the AI automation component of this course, very exciting. And there are a lot of interesting ideas, and I'll introduce some of them. And after Gen AI introduction, we will cover the very basic ideas of machine learning. So you don't need to know Python. We will teach no-code tool. And no-code tool is going to become very, very popular in the near future. So we will teach machine learning for beginners. There will be no formula, but it helps you gain intuition about machine learning. And then you will be able to work with Amazon SageMaker Canvas, which is a no-code ML platform, H2O, as well as KNIME for no-code machine learning model building. So that's the fundamental course. We are very excited about the new addition to the curriculum, generative AI and no-code AI. Now, since we're talking about generative AI, I just want to give you a very brief introduction because a lot of people are confused about Gen AI, artificial general intelligence, AGI, large language modeling, and what is its relationship to machine learning and AI. So based on my understanding, AI is very broad, right? And it's usually tied to applications, and machine learning is part of artificial intelligence. And we can use machine learning to perform many different tasks, right? It sort of allows us to automate a lot of the boring tasks. For example, if you would like to do image recognition, it's going to take you a lot of effort just to do that manually. But if we can train a machine learning model, for example, image recognition model or a classification model on, let's say, thousands or even hundreds of thousands of images using machine learning algorithms, then we can automate this process, right? And machine learning can perform classification tasks. You can use it for unsupervised learning, like clustering, and marketing departments in many companies are using it for customer segmentation, right? So it has a lot of use cases. And deep learning is, a more specialized, machine learning methods, mainly focusing on neural networks. So especially the deep neural networks. And it has been, around for actually many, many years. And in the past 10 years, it really took off, and there are a lot of innovation in this field. And generative AI is part of it. Now, when it comes to deep learning, we need to understand how to train and optimize neural networks. We need to understand how to train that at scale, on GPU clusters, for example. And some of the specific use cases will cover things like computer vision, natural language processing, and of course, generative AI. Generative AI, I tend to think of it as part of the applications in deep learning and machine learning, because it has a lot of common attributes with deep learning and machine learning. For example, it requires input and it gives you some sort of output, right? But the way we sort of work with generative AI tools are slightly different because it does a lot of generation tasks, right? So I'll give you some more examples later. And large language model, LLM, is just part of generative AI because it's not just language models. We can now have VLMs, vision language models, for example, and multimodal models as well. But large language model become extremely popular because since the introduction of ChatGPT, and all of a sudden it changed the whole landscape, and it's very interesting. So if you're wondering about generative AI or learning about generative AI or getting a job in generative AI, here's a very simple suggestion, right? Some of you might be focusing on just using generative AI techniques, right? You can learn prompt engineering and you can make yourself more efficient data scientist. You can use ChatGPT to help you with data analysis. But of course, as of now, I don't think it can help you do like big data analysis, right? But it's helpful, can help you write some, starter code. There are a lot of, it can help you do research, generate ideas, but you really need to understand what it's good for, right? I think eventually it's going to become really, really powerful, but it's still quite limited at this point, and you have to understand the limitation, right? And then you can use generative AI to help you with your, common machine learning tasks. You can use it for annotation, for example, right? And you can design data science products powered by generative AI as well. So these don't really require you to sort of have deep knowledge about large language modeling, right? Or training, pre-training, or fine-tuning. You're just a user of these, generative AI products. I think this is what most people will need to know. Well, if you would like to go down the path of, large language model engineering, for example, there's actually such job title now. Then you need to learn how pre-training works, right? How data augmentation works or data preparation work for model pre-training. And of course, not everyone has, right? Majority of the people wouldn't even have, the budget and money to train a large language model from scratch. So we're going to find a more efficient way to do that, which is fine tuning, right? Some fine tuning methods like LoRa, QLoRa are actually quite inexpensive. So you can actually tailor a large language model, open source large language model, or even GPT-3, GPT-4 to your own data set. I believe this is where the industry is going. A lot of companies would like to sort of explore in this area and make a large language model for their own business on their own data set, right? So there's a lot of great opportunities there. And fine tuning is not always going to solve your problem. And a lot of times, when you build, like, for example, enterprise search, this type of application, you actually need a knowledge base. And you can't really feed all of these enterprise knowledge or whatever text data or image data into the prompts. You can't do that through prompt engineering, right? Or you can have chain of thoughts and, many different methods, but you're still limited by the context, like the amount of data or text or tokens that you can feed into the large language model, such as ChatGPT. So there are alternative ways of doing that, and RAG, or retrieval augmented generation, is just one way to do that. Okay, we'll dive a little bit deeper into that, and I have a session dedicated to this, I think, coming next week. So if you would like to learn more about generative AI large language models, you can join our event next week. Okay. All right. So in simply put, generative AI, very similar to machine learning. It requires input and it requires output, right? In machine learning, you need to feed like training data into the machine learning algorithm, and it generates prediction, right? And the model itself, to most people, it's like a black box. And behind generative AI or ChatGPT, it's basically large language model, which is fine-tuned or instruction tuned. Now, in this case, it's text to image, right? My text prompt is, draw a picture of Chihuahua that was, cyberpunk style, yellow fur sitting on a blueberry muffin, and the output will be an image. So this is text to image multimodal models, right? And this is generated using DALL-E 3. But you can do image to text as well, right? So it sort of understands the images, and you can just feed this image, so this image was actually generated using text prompt. And then I use that as an input or as the prompt and ask ChatGPT to sort of explain that to me. And it does a pretty decent job. So as you can see, there are a lot of potential use cases of large language modeling techniques. But how does it actually work? Not going to share a ton of details today, but I think a lot of you might have heard that it is just the next token or next word predictor, right? It's just predicting the way it generates sentences is that it predicts the next word, right? So that's why when you work with ChatGPT, it gives you the words like one by one, right? So go through different steps, right? For example, you start with "my name is," and then the large language model will generate the next word prediction. And in this case, let's say "my name is ChatGPT," right? And then the next word it's, or token it's predicting is comma, and then "pleased to assist you." So this is called autoregressive model. And when you're learning large language model, and of course you need to learn, the mechanism behind large language model and the transformers architecture. But we're not going to dive into the details today. Okay. Another example here, let's say the Toronto Raptors won the 2019, right? Let's say this is what you feed into the prompt. And it's actually going to do something called completion, right? So the large language model, whether it's GPT-3, GPT-4, is going to basically generate a bunch of predictions and potential outputs, right? So it's predicting a lot of tokens. There's NBA, basketball, and their associated probabilities. So in this case, let's say NBA has the highest probability, 22%. So it can, basically generate the next token, and then you have a new sentence. The Toronto Raptors won the 2019 NBA, but it's not completed. As you can see, ChatGPT can just keep going, right? Keep predicting the next token. And the next token in this case can be game or championship. And then looks like, game has the highest probability. It's not always choosing the highest probability. There are different ways to do this, but we'll leave it for another discussion. Okay. All right. So that's a very brief introduction to generative AI and large language model. And since we're just talking about the fundamental course, so we don't have a lot of technical detail. Now, I would like to move on to AI automation and no-code AI. I would like to introduce some tools. First is Amazon SageMaker, Canvas. SageMaker is Amazon's or AWS machine learning platform. It can be used by data scientists to sort of train and fine tune the machine learning models. You can use Python API. It also has something called Canvas, which is the no-code version. It basically does auto ML, right? And it has a nice GUI, and it can just train models easily. But of course, when it comes to no-code AI, and of course you're losing some sort of flexibility. Okay. It's pay as you go, no code, but you can use Python to interact with it as well. The next tool I would like to introduce is H2O. H2O.ai has a no-code tool as well, called H2O Flow, but it supports R and Python as well. And H2O Studio, it has a large language model studio, and which is relatively new, but I think it's pretty powerful as well. Azure has I think a partnership with OpenAI. So if you would like to work with OpenAI, you can choose the Azure version as well. There's another no-code or low-code ML tool, and it's free and open source. It's called Nime. I really like this tool. It's been around for many years, but if you're not comfortable with coding, but you still want to do data analytics, data wrangling, and build some machine learning model. For example, you work as a data analyst or business analyst, but you still are asked to build some machine learning models. You can totally do that in Nime, and it integrates with many other tools as well. For example, it works with scikit-learn in Python. Okay. And these are the local machine learning tools, but AI automation. So what's the point of using OpenAI and ChatGPT? You can use it as a personal agent or personal tool, right? But what about you would like to automate the daily tasks, the boring stuff? For example, you're receiving a lot of emails every day. You would like to sort of sift through those emails or do some filtering. And if it identify some specific keywords, you would like to extract those email content, send it to OpenAI or ChatGPT, do some sort of translation or summarization, and then you would like it to sort of automatically respond, to do the reply for you. You can set up a workflow, right? As you can see, ChatGPT is not going to do everything for you, and you need other tools to sort of help you with that. And Zapier is one of these tools. It's one of the most popular, I think, tools out there that allows you to do this kind of workflow automation. It has, I think, more than 5,000 integrations. So anything you can think of, like Airtables, Google, Gmail, like Google Sheet. You can even use it to automate PowerPoint. And of course, it's not free, but it's very powerful. So it's an automation tool, pay as you go, no code workflow building tools. Pretty cool. An equivalent version is Power Automate. So if you work, if your company use Microsoft and Microsoft Azure, then you can use the Power Automate version of it. It does something very similar. Even the workflow tool, like GUI, looks kind of similar. Pretty powerful as well. Okay. Again, I'm not going to dive into details, but in the data fundamental and AI automation course, we actually cover Zapier as well as Power Automate. So these are some of the use cases. You can do automation with generative AI integration. You can, of course, do ad hoc usage of ChatGPT and build no-code ML tools as well after taking this course. Some use cases, you can do transcription and translation, right? Translate an email, right? Automate that process. A lot of students we have trained, they have really high interest in automating email responses. We have a student who's an IT manager who would like to automate vacation approval. It's very interesting. They're not really using any HR tool. Usually the request comes through like Slack message or email. And then he would like to basically automate the approval, workflow. And then it was quite interesting. You can use it to set reminders. For example, if you have sent an email to someone and this person has not responded to you for 3 days, you would like to be reminded. I think this is really interesting, useful use case. And I think I personally have this need as well. Or you can add something to calendars. You can use it to generate to-do list as well. You can add things to a Notion table, so very powerful. You just need these API integration. So Zapier is very powerful. And of course, for the GenAI use case, we are mainly leveraging large language models such as GPT, Anthropic, and Google Bard as well. Okay. Some ad hoc usage. For example, you would like to extract content from research papers, right? And I think the GPTs, I think they just announced some of the new GPTs, basically GPT store, right? I see that like some of the most popular GPTs are actually research paper related. It looks like there's a huge demand in that. But of course, you can do this manually by just interacting with ChatGPT. We've worked with students who work in like procurement department. They would like to sort of use that to automate keyword or key information extraction from like from SOWs, which is statement of work, generating, and of course you can use it to write blog posts. But how effective that is, you have to sort of do some experimentation. It's not always working great in some of the use cases because large language models has hallucination problems. Since the introduction of GPT-4, I think it has become a lot better, but still, I think there's a long way to go. Okay, and for no-code AI and ML use cases, some of our past students have used it. Some of them are researchers. They use it to analyze, aircraft engines, to do prediction. People working in material science leverage a no-code AI to analyze research papers, and a lot of interesting use cases. Okay. So how do we get started with generative AI? First of all, my recommendation is just sign up an account, on OpenAI and just start working with ChatGPT or equivalent tools. The first thing you need to do is just learn how to do prompting, properly. But I think prompting is going to become easier as the large language model capability become better and better. But still, it's a very basic, skill set you need to have. And you can't really memorize all of these prompting cheat sheet. You really have to just work with it, use it, and then you build your muscle memory and you become more efficient at it, right? The next step, AI automation. Once you know how to work with OpenAI or ChatGPT, try to use it to automate some of the tasks, right? Repetitive tasks, and see if you can 5x your productivity. I see a lot of people saying that you can 10 times your productivity on TikTok. So definitely give it a try. And I believe it's going to actually help you become like an efficient data professional. So you benefit from these tools, right? Next step is of course, you need to learn data science and machine learning before you learn how to train large language model yourself, right? You need to at least know how to use Python to interact with large language models, right? So you can automate more workflows, because I think in a production environment, you can't always just rely on like ChatGPT. It's good for ad hoc usage, but what if you have, let's say, millions of data points, right? So in this case, you still need to use Python to write some code, and it would be great if you know how to work with the OpenAI API and use that for any kind of large language model driven tasks, right? And after that, learn deep learning, right? How to work with PyTorch. If you actually want to sort of leverage large language models, work with them in Python, then you need to learn how to work with, download the models from Hugging Face and use it for generation tasks. And you need to learn some fundamentals of transformers, sequence to sequence models, right? Before you start to learn how to fine tune models and customize it for your own use cases. Okay, so this is very high level introduction, to generative AI. And if you're interested in hearing more about how to pre-train data preparation, join the event next week. All right, some resources. WeCloudData is, introducing the generative AI introduction course. But if you would like to dive deeper into large language model, in particular, how to pre-train models, how to fine-tune models and build generative AI applications, we do have the large language model specialization course. Some other online resources, definitely check out Andrew N's deeplearning.ai courses. Those are really short courses. They will introduce like large language models, how to work with prompt engineering, how to work with LangChain. Those are like an hour-long course, very informative. You should definitely take those before you dive deeper into those techniques. Databricks has a large language model training course, which is free. Coursera has some really good courses as well. If you want to learn prompt engineering, there's a website called AI Academy. This is like a really short course. I think the content is pretty good. I found that like through TikTok, but there are like many courses like this, so you can find your own. And YouTube is probably your best teacher, so I use that a lot. Okay, all right. Next, on the learning path, after you've learned the fundamentals, you need to learn data science. I'm assuming that you're here because you want to become a data scientist. Then you definitely need to gain data science skills. So to learn data science, I think you need to be really good at data wrangling. So we typically start from data collection. So we teach students how to do web scraping. Some people might be wondering, like, okay, isn't it data engineer's job? Actually, I think data scientists need to know how to do web scraping. Even though ChatGPT can do some web scraping now, but if you're serious about data collection, you need to write your own code. So web scraping is what we introduce. And also, it's a good timing because after you learn Python fundamentals, like you can't really do machine learning yet. So web scraping is actually a really good way for you to sort of get familiar with different APIs and improve your coding, basically. Okay. And then you need to learn how to work with pandas for data wrangling, right? Do data analysis, data exploration, and visualization, and statistical analysis. And we're also adding real life data sets. And some of these will be covered in the use case sessions. And again, we're really excited about adding like some generative AI components, right? This is different from the generative AI course that we're launching. We're also integrating some of these into the data science courses. So we'll cover Gen AI with a focus on data analysis using OpenAI, GPT-4. We also introduce Pandas AI, so students learn how to use prompts to write queries and things like that. Okay, and next up is machine learning. So we not only cover the basics such as statistics, linear algebra, working with NumPy, machine learning algorithms, but also in the new curriculum we're adding generative AI. So we introduce large language model, and then we also introduce Scikit LLM. So I think if you have done some data science machine learning courses, there's one of the most famous or popular machine learning library in Python is scikit-learn. There's actually a new version called Scikit LLM. So if you know Python, definitely look into it. But we'll introduce large language modeling in the data science bootcamp. But again, it's not an AI engineering course, so we wouldn't dive into model pre-training and fine-tuning, because that's more advanced topics. So usually we recommend students to complete data science first before considering the AI courses. Okay. And the last component in our curriculum is big data. We've been teaching big data in our data science bootcamp from day one. I firmly believe that big data is very important for any data scientist to know, because in large companies, you always need to deal with like messy data and also big data. So you need to understand distributed system at a high level. This is when you get introduced to Amazon Web Services, right? Working with cloud storage and compute. Again, this course doesn't really, again, as I said, doesn't turn you into a data engineer, but it just teaches you how to launch EC2 instances, how to use it for some data processing tasks. And then we introduce Apache Spark with a focus on data frame. We introduce Spark ML, and student will typically complete a Spark ML project, focusing on sentiment analysis, analyzing, I think, pretty decent sized, Twitter data set that has 1.5 or 1 million records. And then we are also adding SageMaker, a little bit MLOps concept into the new curriculum. So student will learn how to deploy models in production. But this, again, is an introduction. You're mainly working with the SageMaker API. But if you want to learn more about MLOps, you have to consider our MLOps engineering course. Okay, so I think after you complete the bootcamp, what you're able to add to your resume is the hard skills, the key skills, right? You're adding some programming skills like Python, SQL, machine learning, algorithms, data analytics, visualization, and also big data. But that's not enough for you to get a job or to stand out in the job market. So the next topic I would like to discuss is the job skills. Okay, so we'll talk about hard skills, problem solving, and communication skills. And I'll give you an example. So first of all, let's say we're all aspiring data scientists. We've taken a lot of courses from boot camps, online courses, and we added a bunch of skills, right? And that took us months, a lot of effort. And it turns out that hard skills don't necessarily equal job skills, right? And I'll tell you why. And hopefully, if you're at the beginning of your learning journey, you can learn something useful today. So when you're actually going back to your learning journey, you can apply some of these, and hopefully that helps you. Let's look at how data science project work in real life, right? And most of the data science teams are actually just internal consulting teams, right? In the companies, because they may get data. The data might be sponsored by different business departments. They get marketing data, they get sales data, right? They get loan related data, and they're basically building data science solutions to help the business make better decisions, and they're supporting many different line of businesses. And of course, we have more specialized data scientists who just work in marketing. But there are a lot of data science teams that actually support different teams. So when you get a project request, the first thing, right, you do is just scoping out the project. What do we need to achieve? What is the business pain point, right? You have to understand the business challenge first, and then you move on to the data talk. Do we have the data to support this project? Right? If we don't have the data, what should we do? If we already have the data, where is the data? Where can I get the data from? Right? You might need to communicate with the IT department. That's usually what the data science manager would need to join those meetings, right? And then you have to ingest the data, prepare the data, a lot of data wrangling and cleaning, and then you start doing machine learning and modeling, right? And after that, the output of your machine learning models might be just useful insights that can be used by business to make decisions. For example, you're training a decision tree to explain something, right? Or the models can be put into production, and it's used, as the inference endpoint for some sort of applications. And over time, you're doing test and learn, and you keep improving the model. So it is an iterative process, right? Now, this is where senior data scientists or how senior data scientists are different from the junior data scientist. Okay. At the scoping stage, usually there will be requirement collection. That means you have to join meetings, talk to business teams, right? Try to understand their business problems. And I can tell you a lot of business teams, when they approach the data team, they don't really know how to ask the right question. And you need some sort of experience to understand what they're really looking for. And over time, you need to teach them and sort of educate them to ask the right questions. That requires a lot of soft skills. And usually that's your director's, your manager's job, right? And you're going to do some feasibility analysis. It could be simply based on experience, or you're going to do some sort of very simple, quick and dirty data analysis. And then you're going to get back to your client and say, no, I don't think this makes sense, or we can't really do it, or it's not worth the effort. So you're going to turn down a lot of requests because you can't, like, the data science team is not always going to be like a team of 100 people. You can't like fulfill all of those requirements, and you have to know like how to say no, right? It requires a lot of cross-team function, cross-functional communications. You need to talk to IT, talk to the business team, and sometimes talk to the engineering teams as well. And sometimes you're giving suggestions, and sometimes you're just like begging for data, right? And the IT department also have their priorities. It might take them weeks to get back to you, with the data you need. So you need the people skill here. And of course, you need to be able to write technical proposal. If you work for consulting companies, very common, right? Or at least you need to provide input. And sometimes you need to work as a data science architect, right? So you need to know how to architect the whole thing. It's not really just getting the data and train the model, right? Maybe the model needs to be put in production. So you need to talk with or discuss with the software engineering team, and you're going to offer your insight and your input into this, and a lot of relationship building as well, right? So that's how everything gets started. And the next step is, well, do we have the data? And sometimes you need to understand data infrastructure, right? You're involved in building some sort of pipeline, or it's the first time the company is trying to deploy some models in production. And you need to understand whether you have the data infrastructure. It's not always the data engineering team's job. Or even if you're not the person who's building data infrastructure, you need to understand how it works at a high level. At least you're on the same page or speaking the same language, right? You need to understand data governance, what data you can analyze, what data you cannot analyze. That sort of governs the way you're going to do data cleaning, right? Data modeling, understand schema, understand data models and entity relationships. And a lot of times, like a data science manager may not need to like get the hands dirty and writing all the models. And, they used to do that. But once they become a manager, they're doing things at a high level, right? But before they give a database or some data to the data scientist, I notice like at least the managers I have worked in the past, when they give me the data, they already sort of have some knowledge about the data because they've done a lot of exploratory analysis. They understand the high level metrics. For example, like how many records, how big is the data set, right? How many columns? They have a lot of insight about these data already. And at the very beginning of the project, if it's a new data set we're trying to access, I'm usually approaching my manager to learn more, right? Because she's the one who's involved in all of those IT planning meetings. She understands the data warehouse way better than me. And over time, when I become the leader, I start to sort of play that role, right? But again, you need to understand data modeling, right? But you don't need to be like the data architect, right? At least you need to know how to write queries to work with those, complex database systems to extract data. And sometimes data is simply not available, and you have to make a decision, right? Do we just go ahead and collect or scrape our own data? And sometimes the label is not available. So how do we do data annotation, right? And how to build data pipelines and things like that. A lot of reporting and analytics you need to do. So these are all effort that happens before you start to build the models. Now, I hope we start to see some challenges in just the traditional like learning path, right? You don't get to learn these because the focus is usually on is learning Python SQL and build machine learning models. But to be honest, it's really hard to train someone in a boot camp. So that's why we introduced the data science bootcamp, like the real client project in our learning path, and try to offer like a as real environment as possible, right? At least every task the students work on has a requirement, and there's a deadline, and there's some goal they need to achieve, right? And a lot of times students will need to learn on the go because not everything is taught in the data science boot camp. Okay. All right, when it comes to modeling, and of course, you need to understand how to prepare data. Now, this is actually what a lot of the junior data scientists will work on, right? You get a data set, you're going to build models, and of course, you need to know how to prepare data. You need to understand how to do feature engineering. You need to know how to train predictive models, machine learning models, and select the best models, right? Do test and validation, go through many iterations. This is what a lot of data scientists will focus on, especially the junior level data scientist. Okay. When you become a senior data scientist, because a typical data science team will have many projects and many models to build, a senior data level data scientist may actually start to do more planning related work, right? And they provide guidance to the junior data scientist to complete their tasks. And after the model is trained, the next step is just providing the insights to the business. Let's say you're building a predictive churn model for the marketing team. They would like to understand what does the high risk customers look like, and who's going to leave us or cancel the subscription next week. So you need to know how to interpret the models. So that's model interpretation. That's part of the machine learning techniques, right? Because the business usually, of course, they want to know that your model is accurate, right? But to be honest, even if it's not that accurate, sometimes they will still need to use it because it's still better than like random decisions, right? So the accuracy, whatever metrics, they don't really care about it. What they care about is, okay, tell me the most predictive variables, or what are the top reasons why people churn, right? So you need to be able to explain the models, and usually the business team, if they haven't done a lot of worked with data scientists before, they tend to think that correlation is the same as causal relationship, right? But it's not necessarily the case. So you need to know how to explain the models to the business. You need to know how to do reporting and analytics, and even working with Excel and build pivot tables, because you don't expect to just give them like a Jupyter notebook and expect them to run it themselves. They don't know how to do that. So most of the time, you have to actually either build a dashboard or just share Excel spreadsheet with them. All right, that's very common. Okay. So business communication skill is very important. You need to also know how to build trust, because if you don't know how to sort of build rapport and build trust, it's very hard for you to convince people to use your model, right? So that's why you also need to know how to explain models to people. If they don't feel comfortable, sometimes they may actually end up not using the model, right? And you need to understand ROI analysis, because it's very hard for data scientists to justify, right, the models, because the business will ask you, okay, how much money can you help me save? What's the real value of your model, right? And that means that you need to be able to keep track of things, right? Track the model performance. But how do you do that? How do you calculate the return on investment? Because usually before you deploy the model, right, it means the model has not been used. So how do you convince the business that the model is going to help them to save $2 million, right? So the soft skills is very important. It's not just building the models. Model building can be automated eventually, right? So I think if you plan to become a data scientist, you have to realize this, that there are many other skills you need to learn. And of course, you can learn on the job, right, to become better. And I've seen a lot of data scientists, they're not interested in pursuing like the managerial career path, but they're interested in working as a data scientist in many different industries. And over time, they accumulate many different use cases and industry knowledge. That can make you a very high paid data scientist as well. Okay. And a lot of times, data science models need to be deployed in production to be used by, let's say, software engineers, right? To integrate the models into their software systems. That means you need to know how to build ML pipelines, how to maintain feature store. ML engineers tend to work on this, okay? You need to know how to persist the model, right? Serve the model and also do logging. This is more ML engineering related, but in some companies, the data scientists will need to be involved in that as well. And of course, in the end, you have to monitor your model performance in production because models are always trained on historical data, and we use that to predict the future. So keep monitoring the model performance in production. On live data is important, right? If something goes wrong, you need to know how to adjust it. You need to do some A/B testing, right? Test and learn. And again, reporting and analytics. Reporting analytics is not something that only data analysts would do. Data scientists need to be very comfortable with reporting analytics as well. So just keep that in mind, okay? So I think these are some of the job skills. And if you compare a junior data scientist to a senior data scientist, the first couple of months on the job may look like this. You're given some tasks, very specific tasks, clean the data, train some models, right? So the scope will be pretty narrow. You need to spend a lot of time just trying to understand data, because when we work on Kaggle exercises, you're just given like one CSV file or maybe 10 CSV file. That's too simple. When you start to work for a company and you're accessing their data warehouse, you'll be dealing with like a dozen tables or hundreds or even thousands of tables, right? And you have to sort of know how to read documentation, right? An internal like company wiki, try to understand how to work with these data. And I found myself reading other people's scripts a lot. Like in my first month, I read my manager's code. And that really helped me to understand how they approach problems. And I just started copy and paste their code. And I'm just like going through like a script that has thousands of lines of SAS code, and then I break it apart and run that line by line, just trying to understand how it works. But you're going to learn a lot, right? So you're actually learning more about the business rules and the data itself, and that is also a great way for you to improve your SQL and Python skills. As I said, you're reviewing other people's code, and you're going to do a lot of reporting and analytics and read documentation. Okay, senior data scientist, they will be involved in assessing client needs, right? What do you really want, and what do we have to offer, right? And you need to know like prioritization as well. A senior data scientist might oversee an end-to-end project implementation, right? Because the manager and director might be managing many different projects, and you'll be assigned a project, and then you start to learn how to, directly interact with the business team, with the data engineering IT team. It's a great way for you to learn and practice, right? You will be implementing more complex tasks, deploy models in production, maybe because you have more experience. And you also need to do presentations, right? You need to present the results to the clients, to the VPs, and also help the company adopt best practices. So as you can see, this is the difference. Now, you might be applying for a junior data scientist job, but from the company's perspective, they always want to, ideally, they want to pay you a junior data scientist salary, but you're going to do the senior data scientist job. Who wouldn't want that? So to make sure that you can stand out, I think you need to show more than just the Python and machine learning skills, right? So I think that's my main point here today. And if you take an online course, right, what you learn is technical skills. And your resume is not going to look very different from other candidates. When you join a boot camp and join a master's program, diploma program, you start to build your personal projects, and you can, there's a better chance to stand out for sure. I'm going to promote WeCloudData here. We have real client projects. You're going to add real experience to your resume, and it's really going to help you, stand out. So I think I made my point clear here. All right. Lastly, I would like to introduce how we actually offer job support. The journey to a job offer, right? When you join the bootcamp, of course, you need to start learning the skills. So that's the skill set building. We have three options. I mentioned full-time and part-time bootcamps. We are also launching a self-paced bootcamp. This is also new, along with the generative AI initiatives. So the self-paced bootcamp, basically going through self-paced, content, but along the way, you're going to receive one-on-one mentorship. So when you're going through the learning phase, you have like project and learning advisors. You meet with them on a weekly basis. You also have Slack channels of real-time support. But at a later stage, you also have career mentors. So this is great for someone who just like the flexibility, cannot like commit on a weekly basis, like 15 hours a week. Then self-paced is probably better. Or it's great for someone who just want to finish everything even faster, right? After the skill set building, you start experience building. So building portfolio project with WeCloud, and you can have real client project, and then career mentoring. So we have group workshops. We have one-on-one mentoring, and of course job referrals as well. Okay. All right. And we try to make it more very flexible. So for full-time student, bootcamp student, this is what their typical journey would look like. They just immerse themselves for 3 months in a boot camp to learn technical skills. And typically after graduation, the student get put on real client project for a few months, and then they start the job search. When they start the job search, they receive career mentorship. This is a very traditional like approach here at WeCloud. But we also have some other options because some students will sort of, they're in a rush, so they'll work on the real client project and receive career mentorship at the same time after the boot camp, right? And for part-time students, usually they complete the part-time program. It's a bit long, it's 6 months, and then they start the real client project. The real client project can be purchased separately. So most of the part-time students will just begin with the boot camp. And if they like it, and if they need the real client project, they will enroll in that later. But we also are introducing the self-paced bootcamp. As you can see, it's very different from the full-time and part-time bootcamp because now the mentorship, starts from day one, right? As you go through self-paced learning, we provide the material, and the students will need support. So instead of joining live classes, they will talk to mentors on a weekly basis and also receive support on Slack. So ask questions. But you can use these mentoring sessions for job mentorship. You can leverage it for project help. You can use it for, I guess, any kind of questions you have. So if you're in a rush to build up your resume, you don't have to wait 3 months. You don't have to wait 6 months in the part-time program. You can start from day one. So it all depends on how you want to leverage these mentoring hours. Okay. And in terms of the career mentorship, this is how it works. Like in the full-time and part-time bootcamp, we have group sessions. So this is something that's new as well. So the group session happens, once every 2 weeks. You don't need that many career sessions. So twice a month, we have invited guest speakers, or we have our career coaches to have group sessions, cover things like how to build resumes and how to write your LinkedIn profile and things like that. And then we'll change the speakers to make sure that student can learn new things. And then after the graduation, you start the one-on-one mentorship with some sort of flexible schedule, right? And it really depends on when you're going to get interviews, when you're going to dedicate your times. But it doesn't have to be on a regular schedule, right? When you have more interviews, you can book more sessions, okay? And then for self-paced bootcamp students, the only difference is that when you're going through the self-paced bootcamp, you will have weekly one-on-one mentoring as well. So you get the flexibility. That's all. That's WeCloudData's career support. And I would like to mention that with the career group workshops, it helps you solve some of the common resume problems, right? Is your resume too long? Like I've seen a lot of like 3-5 page long resume. Definitely need to trim it down to 1 to 2 pages. Do you struggle to put relevant experience on your resume? Or maybe you don't know how to structure your resume correctly, or you don't know how to describe your portfolio project. You're not sure what keywords to use, how to position yourself. I think you'll find answers in these group sessions, but your one-on-one career mentor is going to help you build up your confidence, and they help you with your mock interviews, and then can provide more customized support, because you can have a generic resume, but once you get the interview, the employers will always be different. So you need to apply different strategies in interviews, right? Job search is a two-step process. You need to get interviews first using your resume, and then you need to pass the interview. So that requires communication and interview skills. So I think the mentors will really help you with the second part. And of course, they help you with your resume as well. So that's it. I think I've gone through like 60 slides. Hopefully this is very useful to you. And I think now I have some time to answer your questions. So feel free to ask me if you have any questions. I'm, you know, and feel free to unmute yourself if you have questions.
Yeah, hi.
Oh,
I have a quick question. Um, so you mentioned large language model hallucinations. This might be too high level, but or too low level, I'm not sure. But do you know of any ways to kind of mitigate those hallucinations?
yeah, to reduce the hallucination, there are a lot of fine-tuning methods that allows it to do that. But a common approach in the industry is actually try to use something called RAG, so retrieval augmented generation. But
Okay.
basically, um, instead of relying on ChatGPT, because ChatGPT, imagine it knows the world, but it doesn't always know how to answer, like tailor the question to your question, right? And maybe you want it to answer something very specific to, let's say, genomics, but it's trained on the data collected from the web, and there's a distribution of these data,
Okay.
right? So it's not like the data is not really like, if the training data is purely collected from genomics, then ChatGPT is gonna be an expert in that, right? So RAG is something that allows you to sort of, let's say, store a lot of the publications and papers of genomics in a database, which is a vector database. So before it sort of answers your question, right, it knows its own world, but it also tried to reference, the vector database. It would do a quick search, a semantic search, and retrieves the most relevant answers or documents based on your question, and then it does
Okay.
generation based on that. That sort of helps with reducing the hallucination a lot, and it's not perfect, but a lot of people are trying that right now.
Sweet. Okay. Thank you.
No problem.
Hi there.
Hello.
Yeah, I am Ali, and I
Hey, Ali.
study data analytics and management here at IIT Chicago. I'm a Fulbright scholar, so I can't work here in the US after my graduation.
Okay.
Um, but I'm looking forward to like working with some US company or some Canadian company, maybe if it's possible. Um, but yeah, I'm basically in the last semester right now. It's just started. I'll be finishing it in May 2024. Um, but since US companies required work authorization that I don't have, and I won't be able to even live here in the US. So, is there any way to get a job from the Western market and maybe like get a job from Canada and then go and live there?
There's definitely a possibility to work in Canada, but I'm not expert on this. Um, you maybe you can send me an email. I can point you to the right person who knows more about this. Yeah. Yeah, but we, we
Right.
we do have like US students who sort of like somehow like decided to live in Canada. I don't know how that actually works. But I can ask around. So I left my email. If you can send me an email, and I'll point you to the right person.
Thank
Um, in the chat, there's a question about what's the plan for the more advanced topics. Uh, what sorry, what are you referring to? More advanced topics? Do you mean the topics in the boot camp or the event? If you're interested in more advanced topics, we do have an event next week that introduces more about like large language models, if that's what you're
Oh,
asking about.
oh, yeah. So more of the one that you are mentioning is more for introductory topics. So if there is something that, more advanced one, I will attend the next week meeting. So
Oh,
I
okay.
will ask you there.
So you can go to I think you can go to meetup.com /pro WeCloudData and you can find all of our events.
Oh yeah, fine. Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Can you please discuss how the data science job market has changing due to GPT models? I think from my perspective, it hasn't changed a lot. I have friends who work in different companies. I know they're internally, in some big banks, they've been trying to experiment with large language models and use that to build some sort of applications that can sort of suggest or write SQL queries. They've done some proof of concept. It's not deployed in production. I think their goal is to sort of help a data analyst and business analyst become more efficient. So you indeed you can use GPT to automate some of the the low level data analytics work, right? But I think that's not the real value of a data analyst and data scientist. And I mean, when you start learning data science, training machine learning models usually is just 10 lines of code, right? Anyone can do that. You can go to Kaggle, find probably like a million Jupyter notebooks. A lot of those are really like if you can just filter by like most voted notebooks, and those are really decent notebooks, and you know how to train models, but it doesn't help you get a data scientist job. So I think in practice, as I said, there are a lot of like the job skills, right? If you if we're talking about scoping the project, right? Doing big data analysis, reporting and analytics, that's something I think GPT is not able to do. It's going to take many years because when people say ChatGPT can do data analysis, but that's not data analysis. It's really just using prompting to create a plot. But like creating a plot is so simple. Like you can do that in Excel. It doesn't make you a good data scientist or data analyst because it's the insight that's more important. But GPT is not yet like digging into the data yet, right? And of course, you can build AI agents, to call some sort of functional APIs to analyze the data, but you need people who can interpret this. So again, focus on an interpretation. That's really important. And the tool can always change over time. Like, when I started my data science career, I used SAS, right? And that used to be one of the most popular enterprise data analytics tool, and you can use it to build machine learning models. And I've built a ton of models in the past. And then I started to learn Python, and R, became popular for quite a while, and Python took over, and then you have to learn Apache Spark. But again, these are just tools. And I think tools are always easy to learn, and if it can be automated, why not? Yeah, it saves you time. So I think your goal, if you would like to get into data science, is that you want to get over. Imagine like your junior data science, period is 3 months. The first 3 months on the job, or first 6 months on the job, right? You want to get over that as quickly as possible. And beyond that, I don't think ChatGPT can automate your job, your work. But if it's just creating a plot, in the future, maybe you can just use, well, I think you can do that already. Just use voice prompt and say, hey, help, just describe it using prompting to create, a plot. But you still need to be able to analyze the data. And then you might have a question. Okay, so that means the bar is really low. Anybody can do that. But I think in practice, database systems or data problems are way more complex than what we are seeing in the demos. You really need to dig into those data to understand the business and how to analyze those data. That part I think is a little bit hard to automate, and I don't know what the future may look like, but I think at least as of now, it's definitely not going to replace the data scientist job. So So I think that's why a lot of companies are still hiring senior data scientists. People may have like different opinions, but that's just my take on it. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I agree. Like doing serious analysis is, is very different. And also, if you work for a bank, you might be using Apache Spark to analyze the data stored in the databases. That's like millions or billions of records. Are you seriously going to feed that into ChatGPT? Because one query may cost you hundreds of dollars, because they charge you based on number of tokens and context window, right? That is not a sustainable business model. Like, no, I mean, that's not sustainable for many businesses. So that's why one hot area in large language model modeling is bringing open source large language model in-house, right? And that requires AI engineering and ML engineering, MLOps skills. And it goes beyond just like training the models. It's like, how do you deploy the model for inference that's, that's economic, right? But also like low latency, scalable. It's a lot of engineering work. So if you know how to do that, I think you're gonna get really high paying jobs. If a person from mathematics background want to be a data scientist, is that possible? Yes. If you're good with math, then you're meant to, data science is meant to be one of the career path choice for you. Because we see a lot of people come from math background, they do really well in data science. And but of course, what's missing is maybe the Python programming and SQL programming. But I mean, if you know MATLAB, then Python is easy for you. SQL might be something new to you. So definitely learn how to work with databases. That's really important. Yeah. How long can it take on average? So depending on the learning mode, I think if you do self-paced learning, it might take you 1 to 2 years, because the learning path might be a little bit long. Boot camps are usually for like, more intense, and it's suitable for job seekers and career switchers. So it's usually going to take you 6 to 12 months, because you need 3 to 6 months to sort of join a full-time or part-time boot camp to learn all the skills, and you have to practice and go through the job search process. So I would say, between 6 and 12 months. All right. Any other questions? How long does it take for one to be good in his job as a new data scientist on average? That's a good question. Based on my experience, because we've trained a lot of data scientists and data analysts in the past, and because we provide like real client projects, so we provide reference when they get their job. And I noticed that like when the student is like getting their second data science jobs, right, they'll come back to us and ask for reference again. I don't have a definitive number, but I think our alumni, I can tell, like after like between 1 and 2 years, they will switch job. Then they either jump to like a better paying job, or they get promoted, or yeah. So I would say like usually like 2 to 3 years, you're ready to be promoted as a manager or senior. And I've seen a lot of students like just jumping ship like in a year, even 6 months, and get a much better job. Because sometimes you may start low, like the market might not be great, or you got an opportunity, you decided just to take it, right? And then you're just getting ready for the next better job. So maybe 6 months later you will switch. So yeah. Computational biology background, pretty good with data analysis in Python, or complete data science bootcamp, hard luck in scoring interviews. Any tips? Yeah, Shilpa, I think the job market is tough right now. It's not great. The last year we see a lot of job cuts, actually since like 2022. So that's why our placement rate also dropped. But I think my general suggestion for candidates like you is that first of all, I think computational biology, that's great, awesome background. And you're already experienced with data analysis. What's really missing here is just the experience or the way you write resumes. I think your challenge here is not scoring interviews. So you need to talk to someone to help you sort of improve your resume, and then maybe just figure out how to put some experience and build more portfolio projects. Yeah, the job market right now is not very friendly to beginners or someone who's just like try to break into this industry because a lot of companies, like, they're on hiring freeze or they have limited budget. They would actually prefer to hire someone who's more senior. And like, they're already limited by resources. If they have one opening, they want to hire someone who can just do more work, right? So yeah, so it's a little bit challenging to stand out. Yeah, but if you're interested in the real client project option, you can definitely talk to WeCloudData. Yeah.
What do you mean real-time data problems?
Oh yeah, so we have a service called Real Client Project. WeCloudData is a training academy, but we also have a consulting company. We have a lot of clients, and we can put you on these projects to add. So it's a real setting. You're not given like toy data set. You'll be working with the client directly. We have project managers, we have project lead, and you will be joining these projects as a contributor, and you can add those as real experience on your resume. So because a lot of people are struggling to put experience, right? The top of your experience section, you're just missing that relevant experience. So this is what this service can provide to help you build real industry experience quickly. And you can, if you like, you graduate from a boot camp, so you don't have to go through the boot camp again. You can just do the real client project. It's available as a separate component. So definitely come talk to us, and if you're interested, yeah. And we have data engineering, AI projects. We have data science and BI projects. Many different options.
Okay, yeah. Thank you. I will check.
No problem.
I will check that out.
Are most data scientist jobs in the market on hybrid, or are most jobs going remote now? I see this trend of like people going back to like work offline, like in office. But definitely there are a lot of remote opportunities. Some of our students in Canada, they will get like remote jobs in the US. So yeah, I think definitely more hybrid jobs, especially during COVID. But now like people are going back to the office more often now, I think. But for example, WeCloudData has a consulting company, and all of our projects are remote, because we can't possibly have like offices in different cities. And the clients are based in Singapore, in US, in Canada, in different places. So it's always going to be remote teams, and our students are remote, our project managers are remote, clients are remote. The good thing about data science is that you don't really need any office facility, right? You're just logging into the cloud environment provided by the client, you're accessing their data. It's very common to have a virtual team in a data space. A typical boot camp, right, will cost you somewhere between like $12,000 and $15,000. And with WeCloudData, it's the same price, and the real client project is included. So it's additional, like we're not charging more, but we're offering more value. But it can be purchased separately as well. Do Canadians need special documents, visa to get hired by US companies? If you work remotely, well, again, I think for this, you really need to consult with someone who specializes in this. Based on my experience, our students who's working remotely, they don't need visa. And sometimes somehow like the client pay them US dollar. But there are some clients like hiring companies that they have Canadian office, and that's why they get hired. But like they have Canadian office, but the team is actually based in in the US. So they're basically remote, like working from their home. I've seen this, so yeah. But yeah, visa, I'm really not sure. Can you advise on how to get data scientist jobs that are remote? I don't really have a lot of tips on this. I mean, like if you, for example, go to Indeed and search for data science jobs, they basically have an option to tell you if it's hybrid or remote. That's one option to do. Yeah. Most of the jobs will tell you if it's remote or not, I think. Or they will tell you like, does it require travel or things like that. And sometimes like this is something you can negotiate. Like, for example, like when we do corporate training, I noticed that one of the banks we train here, they have a US office, right? Most of the people we train, they're actually based in the US, but the manager and director is in Canada. So obviously it's a remote team. So sometimes it's just like how you negotiate. And if they really want to hire you, you can bargain, right? Yeah. Companies are definitely more and more open to remote workers. So due to COVID. So yeah. Any other questions? It's my pleasure. No problem. My pleasure. All right. Thanks, everyone. I hope you have a great evening. And yeah, I'll look forward to seeing you in our future events. And again, if you're interested in switching career, definitely check out WeCloudData.com. And I hope you guys have a good evening.